I'm not driving around anywhere. I'm traveling. I'm moving
Okay.
property. Driving is a commercial term. This is a common misunderstanding. You talk about fighting the culture war. How do we fight the culture war if we don't get to the root word, which is cult, right? Culture. So you got a bunch of folks running around who hold beliefs that are not in line with reality, definition, meaning, purpose, words, and terms. So let's start there, man.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah,
get into it.
absolutely. Well, let's start with explain corporation of government to me, and that it's not operating under the actual Constitution the way our founding fathers envisioned, right? So you want to go into that first?
Sure. So there's a federal corporation under the United States Code we call the United States, right? They'll say it's sovereign citizen, conspiracy theory, mumbo jumbo. No, it's right there. United States Code. Go look it up. Cornell University. The A example is a federal corporation. So again, Title 53, I believe, converts essentially all government into corporations. So the definitions and words and terms are all there. United States is a federal corporation. A citizen, someone who owes allegiance to that corporation. Now, again, originally there was the land, like I told you before, there's two states in each state, or on each state. There's a state of California and California state. One is the land, one is the corporate body. That's why there's two senators for each state. This is my understanding, right? And when I lay out my understanding, it tends to make more sense than the understanding they've given us. So the Declaration of Independence outlines that statute, policy, and code, and I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but you can go back to Cornell University. The principle of consent of the governed means each and every single man and woman has to consent to policy and code governing them, or else the power transfers back to God's law, right? Universal law, common law, and that is codified in the contract we know as the Constitution. So essentially, there's dual jurisdictions in this land right now, or on this land. There's corporate jurisdiction, policy and code regulation, and then there's a common law. What was once common law, right? It's no longer really common anymore. What was once the common law was universal law codified in the contract we know as the Constitution, which was all men and women are created equal. All men and women have a right to pretty much do whatever they please to pursue their happiness as long as they don't infringe upon their fellow man and woman. But through different amendments and rewriting the foundational law, right, the foundational contract, the Constitution, they added in amendments and basically created that corporate capacity, right? The idea of public safety. So you're a part of a body politic, what the politicians call the unspoken social contract, and you're regulated for yourself and others for the whole. It's called a demosocracy. Demos in Latin means mob, ocracy means rule. So this is why you have, and I don't mean to ramble here, but this starts in the public school. They teach you the republic is a democracy. They teach you to vote for corporate leadership, a president, a vice president, a treasurer. These are all corporate positions. So they've conflated with the government and law of the land with the corporate capacity, the corporate body known as the United States, who we've all identified as allegiance with. And that's how we get governed by policy and code, right? Is by our status and standing. How we present, they stop you on the side of the road, you will identify. Identify means to take on an identity other than your original identity, right? So I could go on and on and on because there's so much to this. If you want to call it a fraud, a misunderstanding, a lack of accurate record keeping.
So it comes down to like the consent of the person. Like, let's say you get pulled over by a cop. When you agree to their terms, you are now going under their rule of law, correct? Is that how you explain
It,
it?
co- it, it comes out of the Department of Revenue Service. Again, these are all Title 53 corporations. They have principles. None of this is the executive branch of what we would call the United States government. These are all corporate bodies, right? So you go down to the DMV, you fill out the records incorrectly, you put a first and last name there. They ask you for a person. They ask you what your status and standing is. You tell them I'm an all caps United States citizen, part of the body politic, part of the corporation. I can be regulated by policy and code. You register your private property under UCC. Uniform Commercial Code is deemed a household good. It's private property. You register it. Regis, the root word is king. So you've turned private property into state property, to corporate property. And that's how, again, they can regulate it, because a motor vehicle under federal code is a commercial instrument. It is not something that moves around with a motor in it. There's an automobile ruled on in Supreme Court, then there's a motor vehicle. Again, one is private property, free to travel, unregulated, right, by the law of the land, God's law. The other one is self-identified, what we would call title. Only king grants title. Man and woman in this realm originally is king. So you granted a title to that automobile, you called it a motor vehicle. It's now become a commercial instrument in the legal society. Now they can regulate it. So when they pull you over, what's the first thing they ask you for? We want your status and standing. We want proof of the contract, license, registration, insurance. Now, once they get that, they got jurisdiction. Jurisdiction in Latin means to say the law. If they put forth a bunch of words, you accept the words and what they mean, or you ignore the law, right? Ignorance of the law is no excuse. Then they bring you into court and they drag you around the room under policy, code, and regulation, because you don't understand who and what you are, and you don't understand how to keep accurate records or how to present yourself as a man or woman of the people. You are a corporate citizen.
And you enter as a corporate citizen, I guess, at birth with the birth certificate, right? I mean, when
Part of the process.
That's
part of the process.
That's a process, right?
But again, these things are not necessarily inherently evil. A lot of this stuff was created to you could argue they crashed the money system, did away with lawful money, brought in legal tender, and then essentially made us all able to be regulated. If you look on the side of the road, Valdez was asking me about what I do for a living and do I pay taxes and use legal tender. It's because they want you using instruments of their legal society so that they can claim that you are essentially on the clock full time, right? You're a member of the legal society, therefore legal code applies to you and we could do legal process on you. So,
Julie,
yeah,
Paul,
the person. Go ahead.
I have a question, Paul. So now I believe what you're saying is that you are a free individual person, human being of this earth. You do not subjugate yourself to the jurisdiction of the state government that's trying to be a corporation and have you be a slave to that corporation. Is that correct so far?
Sure, but again, we have to watch the words and terms. Under U.S. code, there's two types of person. There's a natural person and then there's a legal person, which is a corporate entity. So when you're summoned to appear in court as the person, that's all dead language, right? They're summoning a corporation, a dead entity. It's in all caps. All caps is capitis diminutio maxima. It's the maximum diminishment of your capacity. It's your person. It's not you, right? It's the legal entity that was created at birth that they gave you to do legal business. You're identifying as the person rather than saying, I have a person. It's the same way you have a citizenship. You are not a citizen.
Right. So then now you're talking about the Organic Act of 1870, that where we became a corporate America. Is that correct?
There's different things that people point to. I'm not specifically pointing to one event or one bill or one act. I'm laying out the imagery with the words and terms, meaning and definition of the highest code, if you want to call it that, the superior code, which is still part of the corporation, but again is put there to regulate these folks, because the highest up since the beginning knew what these folks were going to do. They were going to do fraud and barratry. But the bar runs this whole country. It's a British accredited registry. Those are the same folks we fought a revolution against. Did we really win? Or did they come back with a corporate takeover, fund all the public schools, get everybody under jurisdiction with central banking, and now run all of our lives with policy and code because they've subverted the republic, right? These, again, like the founder said, 250 years, we're right on time. You will be taken down from traitors within. So every one of these lawyers, every one of these politicians, every one of these folks who grew up on this land has overthrown the law of the land for a British parliamentary process we call demosocracy, which is collectivism.